Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of That's What Healing Is. This month I am speaking to Black female nonprofit founders and how they balance their life. I'm so excited to have one of my very favorite nonprofit founders, Raven Chris Smith, because she's married. Put some respect on that new last name. She is amazing. She is the founder of Selfless Hands here in Oklahoma City, and she was my go-to person when I was starting my nonprofit. So I I know I'm older than her, but she is my big sister in the nonprofit world, and so I love her. Welcome, 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 Raven. I have you're so
Hey,
welcome.
thanks
I
for
have
having
so
me.
many questions. It's been forever since we've talked in person. But you're just out here building an amazing foundation for your nonprofit. You are building amazing resources for Oklahoma City. Tell me, how do you balance your Raven life, your normal, yourself as a wife and as a founder? How do you balance it all?
Honestly, it's a everyday challenge. I literally was just talking to my husband and two of my best friends. I was talking to them about this. Matter of fact, this week, where I'm pretty hard on myself. I was like, man, I don't think I'm ever gonna get this balance thing together. But a lot of times, I don't give myself a lot of credit for what I have balanced. I do work a full-time job while running Selfless Hands Foundation. I work at Tinker Air Force Base in financial management. Then I have the nonprofit Selfless Hands Foundation. We just celebrated 5 years. I celebrated 4 years with Tinker this year. Let's see what my husband, we're coming on 4 years together, 2 years married this year. And then, just also, I mean, really just being a human being outside of all of that is really just
Hmm.
trying to figure out what that 100% looks like. For me at one point, I thought that 100% was, I'll wake up, I'll clock in, do my job, then I'll do Selfless Hands. Then I'll make sure, my husband is fed and he's good. Then I'll do the laundry, then I'll clean the house, then I'll go to the gym, then I'll self-care. Like, it just, a lot of times I'm able to do the 100%. A lot of times I am able to get up, clock in, do my job, do Selfless Hands, cook dinner or cook breakfast. Sometimes I'm able to cook both breakfast and dinner. Well, breakfast and lunch is kind of ideal brunch. So brunch and dinner. Sometimes I'm able to go to the gym. Sometimes I'm able to do at least one load of laundry. Um, but I tend to be hard on myself when I'm not able to check all the boxes. And I'm learning literally today, yesterday, this week, that it's okay. 100% looks different for everybody. So I
Yeah, you got to
balance
do it just like, yeah, one day at a time.
by taking
Because just like with
every day
your
to just figure it
nonprofit,
out.
it's not going to happen overnight. So you have to make sure that you give your all in whatever capacity it is. Like you said, some days you might be able to give a full 100%. Some days you might be able to do maybe 80, and that's still okay. And you have to um, be proud of yourself in those lower days, because those are probably the days that you will probably get a lot of impactful things done that you don't even realize. Now, my question that I ask every founder that I know: why? Why
Hmm.
did you start your nonprofit?
Whew, so let's see. There's always a funny question because I can tell you how I started, and the why is not, to me, always as impactful as the how I came into it. But ultimately, to answer your question, the why of why I started Self Defense Foundation is because when I tried to collaborate with other organizations that were around to implement the idea that I was specifically passionate about, I had a lot of pushback. Not a lot of people was willing to collaborate on it. And while still doing my journey of actually doing the work of it, I met my mentor out in Houston, and he has a community center. And I remember thinking like, well, I don't necessarily want to do a community center, like it's a lot of activities going on. I just want to go straight to the social work. emergency, crisis, disaster relief purpose. How can I help right now? And alongside of, the issue that I had where it was hard for me to get with anybody that could just get, be willing to share the stage to help the community, I realized there's not really a lot of that out there either.
Right.
Outside of FEMA, Red Cross, what is that for us on the northeast side of Oklahoma City? Somebody's house burned down due to a fire. What happens? We got tornadoes. What happens? I feel like, being born and raised in Northeast Oklahoma City, I just didn't recall growing up seeing those type of resources available. Or at least available enough to where a lot of us just knew about it. So that's really the biggest reason of why I did it, was because I wanted to make sure that whatever I did as my contribution to the Northeast side isn't repeating what the next person is doing. It just doesn't make sense to create something that someone else is doing, because then I could just volunteer there.
That is
So
a good
what
why.
way
Now,
can
what's
I
that
help, and can
how?
I
Because you
contribute
said
that's
that's a big,
aligned
it's
with my heart
different,
and my
impactful
passion,
story. So, what's the how? How
that
did
can
you
still
start?
meet the needs of everyone else? So that is why I decided to do this. So the how, it really goes back to my days at Oklahoma State University. I long story short, I had a really close friend of mine, childhood best friend of mine, who passed away abruptly, and it had me tore up. I was depressed. I was in a slump. I didn't want to do anything. I mean, I'm almost sure I almost failed that semester out of college, I believe, because I just didn't want to move. It's one thing to be around death. You losing, a friend, a sibling, or a cousin, but when you lose your best friend, the friend that's supposed to be there whenever you lose those type of situations, or when you're up and you're down, sometimes I think that that's not talked about enough. The grief, um, the grieving cycle of losing someone that is your best friend is discussed enough, and I didn't really know how to process it. So one thing that I did turn to was the idea of community service. I came across this deal at OSU. It was called the CORD program, where they asked you to volunteer up to 400 hours. You get this CORD during the time that you attend school. Well, by that time, I found out it was into my second year of school. I was graduating in 3. So I looked at it and I said, I got to do 400 hours in about, at that time, less than 2. I mean, I was already in my second year, so I really just had 4
Hmm.
semesters, technically, to get 400 hours of community service. And, most people, they have a hard time doing 100 hours just in a year, let alone me trying to break down 100 hours of community service in about 4 months. So I looked at it as a challenge. That was the one thing that got me out of bed. I remember asking them, hey, do I have to go walk the dogs at the Humane Society? I'm scared. I'm terrified of dogs, so I didn't want to do the cliche services. I didn't really care for doing, some of these services where, like at the food pantry and at the uh, Salvation Army down Stillwater. I remember, just thinking, oh my God, we're doing all these things and packaging up all this food, but it only goes to the people that actually can come out here. What about the people that don't have transportation? So these are things that I'm thinking at what, 19 years old at that point. And I asked her if I could do my own community service hours. I said, as long as I'm able to document what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, am I able to do it? She said, yeah. So I started being real innovative. Came from a history of, I had a history of domestic violence with an ex-boyfriend of mine, so that was, at the time, was very important to me during that time. So I started doing clothing drives and hygiene drives for women who are escaping those situations, like immediately. I partnered with Our Sister's Closet in Oklahoma City. That was my main place where I was taking the clothes to, because I knew at the time they were directly helping women in need. I started doing that whenever we had Terrence Crutcher. He was killed here in Oklahoma. We actually was able to start like a condolences drive, where at the time I was like, man, I don't know really how to help, but I want the family to know that we care, that we're here, we stand behind. So I started collecting condolences cards from people in Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Stillwater, OSU's faculty and staff. I had some of my sorority and fraternity friends that was nationally sending the love and prayers once they found out, and we had to deliver it to them. So I was just like really trying to find ways of where I could, help. And one day I came across this deal on Instagram. Kalani posted it about the Baton Rouge floods. And I called the councilwoman at the time and I said, hey, I'm in Oklahoma. How can I help? She was surprised. She was like, how old are you? Like, where you come from? I'm like, Oklahoma City. Well, technically
Wow.
Stillwater. And rallied up a whole bunch of items. And that's when I learned during that drive down there and during my time down there that emergency crisis and disaster relief was my passion. Mainly disaster relief at that time. Once I graduated, I was still doing Hurricane Harvey, Reno tornadoes, down there working for Child Protective Services. So once I worked for Child Protective Services, I was able to get exposed to the families. A lot of times when you hear
Hmm.
about DHS and CPS, you're like, oh, they're coming to take my kids. But the reality is, at least for me as a Child Protective Services worker, that was not my priority, was taking people's kids unless it was like, yeah, you need your kids removed. It had to be very severe, child being
Mm.
severely neglected or abused. A lot of the cases that I was grateful to have were families who were great supportive families, had a great support system, but they lacked resources. They lacked beds, so it was moms that was having postpartum depression and was at risk for losing their kids just because they couldn't clean up. They just couldn't get up. They needed that motivation. They needed just some help. And I remember getting up at 7 in the morning, really sometimes 6 in the morning before my shift just to go help them clean up because I knew that they just needed that. So those are some of the things that really pushed me to start Selfless Hands Foundation because I felt like there are not a lot of resources that move quick enough. And I know that because as a social worker, me putting in these requests into the portal, sometimes never hearing anything ever at all or it's delayed. At the time, I was able to get a lot of the resources out there quicker than the portal was supposed to. So it started in Northeast Oklahoma City where I was being that light for community members there, and now it's taken off bigger than just the Northeast Oklahoma City area. But that is, like I said earlier, I didn't want to have a community center. Mine was more donation center based. So that is why I actually decided to start the nonprofit organization. Not because I just woke up dreaming I wanted to have one. Honestly, I only did it because I have to have one in order to do what I want to do. I have to have um, a 501c3. A lot of people don't realize you don't need to have one if you're just doing the initiative, you don't need to have that. But for specifically for what I'm doing with
I love
taking
it. And
donations
I'm
and
glad
receiving
that you're
donations, I
stepping into
needed
your
that.
purpose, that you are walking and
Especially
living in your
doing something
purpose,
that's kind of, I won't
because
say
you
close to
are a role
government,
model
but
for someone else
just the idea
who,
of being that
might
donation
see you and
center.
be like, you
So
know what, I
that's
want to
how I
help in a
started. Not
different
because I just
way.
woke up
And
and
they
said,
might
oh my
think that
gosh, I need to start a nonprofit, but because once I
what they
started
want to
diving
do
into
may
my
not be
purpose, I
needed,
realized those are
but
some of the things that came
they'll
with
feel
it.
like I could do it. Raven stepped out, I could do it. And so I am grateful for you, and I know the community is grateful for you. Now, you did mention mental health, about how, parents, mothers, how do you have you had struggled with anything mental health wise trying to find that balance? Do you just have those days where you're just like, nah, I can't do this? Because I know I've struggled with it, trying with getting the nonprofit to where it needs to be, where you just feel like you're being pulled every which way, and you just like, look, I'm gonna stop. Have you ever had those moments? That's good. Okay, bless you.
Honestly, nah, nah. I mean, I've had mental health. So let me backtrack. Yes, I have. Yes, um, but not necessarily tied to the nonprofit. A lot of my mental health. Sorry. Whew, I don't never sneeze during a podcast. That's a first. Um, so, whew, Lord, I'm also not in this guest room too much either. So, anyway, so I wouldn't necessarily say it was
Okay.
anything tied to my nonprofit. I've always Um, having a tough skin is needed. Having a tough skin is needed. Having to put things into perspective is needed, and that's something that I always tell myself. So there's moments where um, I may say like, "Dang man, okay, so that didn't go the way that I wanted it to." But I'm back to the drawing board. I don't really allow myself, as far as my nonprofit, to get too much in a rut. I mean, I would say most recently, like if something happens where, and a lot of this is just me learning, when I first was starting, and even just up until, last year, I finally was like, it's no more friends that I'm allowing into the nonprofit or my nonprofit without actual proper credentials. You have to come to the table. It's no more of that. Oh my gosh, I respect what you have going on. I love what you got going on. I love serving your board. Or I love serving your team. Um, nah, because I need more than that. And because of some of those decision makings, I didn't vet the right people. When I first started. So it ended up causing some issues that, trickled into my personal life. Where, over time, you spend time with people, you form a friendship, but those are friendships you should have never had. And that is what has put me in a place because for me, I have a big heart. I don't like being at odds with people. When I love, and I love hard. So, when I'm dealing with betrayals and things like that, that can take a toll. That's taking a toll on how I felt way more than the nonprofit itself. I get stressed out at times only because, it's only 24 hours in a day, and I'm only one person. So, mentally I can only do so much. I'm kind of like a walking octopus, but it's like at the same time, even though I get stressed, I don't allow myself to get too down because if we're gonna be honest, I look at it like this: I don't have the time to get down. I really don't. I mean, a lot of times when things happen, I tend to take it to the chin and I keep it pushing because I don't have time to sulk. The hour I'm spending sulking, I could have been doing something more productive. So that's how I channel. I mean, even recently, I mean, I wasn't always this way. So that's
Yes.
why I have to try to be realistic. Like back in the day, you know, yeah, I was in a funk. I mean, I was coping through alcohol. I was, coping through sex. I mean, like I had different vices that I wasn't necessarily, I mean, that wasn't healthy. Um, but that's just because, I mean, everybody processes things differently. There's different trauma, there's different life situations. Um, but over time, I will say just having a supportive support system. I'm sorry. Yeah, having a supportive support system. Actually, that's still accurate. My husband, he's very, big on accountability and just being a great support system. He helped me in so many ways. I mean, now at this point, when I'm stressed, um, I go to the gym, or I get up and I go for a walk, or I talk it out. I just communicate. Like, I don't have any unhealthy coping mechanisms anymore. For example, like if I work too much, I mean, because that's the thing that I do. I work a lot, and that's how I process mental health. So, like, if I'm sad, if I'm mad, if I'm tired, I'm hungry, I channel that into selfless hands because I don't want my energy to go wasted. So it's like, yeah, you pissed me off, but I just came up with this. So it's all mental. It really is like, and it's not easy. It takes a lot of training. I mean, like I said, I've been with him for 4 years, and it's been a 4 year long journey
That's the
to
one.
where it's like, okay, Raven, you can, don't get me wrong. Yeah, Raven, you can vent, you can allow yourself to feel, but you can't allow yourself to feel and just keep feeling. You're gonna have to figure out what works for you, and everybody have their own different things. But for me, doing what I love to do is my coping method. It's easier. Ain't nobody getting
Mm-mm.
hurt. Nobody getting cussed out. Ain't nobody getting beat up. Like it's easier. It's hard out here. A lot of folks,
Mm-hmm.
especially now, I'm married now. I don't know why people love to try marriages, and just like, for example, when you're getting blessed, there's haters that come out there, and some of them need their butt kicked. Nobody likes to talk about it. Everybody likes to do this bigger picture, bigger person type of deal. I don't believe in that too much. I
Those
do
are all
believe that
good.
sometimes you need
Yes,
to
that's all good coping
let people
skills
know
because listen,
how things can
like
go.
you said. I'm
Um,
girl, just see the change because yeah,
we
no.
could take that how they want
All
to
of my
take it.
vices used to be
Um,
bad, and they're
but
slowly
rather than
are
going to the
changing
extreme,
to positive
I
ones.
cope
But
with my mental
sometimes
health
people pull you back
by
into
doing
your
the things I
negative
love,
space where you
which is
have to be
spending time
like,
with
look, let me
family,
take my
self
earrings
care,
off. Let me
watching
show
a
you
great TV show,
that I'm serious.
cooking. So, yeah. Hope that answered that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 'cause a lot of times people have a hard time adjusting to who you're becoming. I mean, as you're growing, like people that know me from back then, like for example, college days, and I used to be the
Right.
one that didn't mind getting out there fighting for my friends, like fighting my friends' battles. But as we transition, the conversations look different because if you lead people in a sense,
Mm,
not always intentionally, but if you're growing and you happen to have left the person where they were at, and then you go back and you're reconnecting, and they're
hmm
still thinking you're probably the same Raven. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think people have known that okay, Raven's making some moves, but that don't necessarily mean that you change as a person. So the conversation look different whenever it goes from,
Right.
oh no, girl, let me know what's going on. I got your back. To, man, I'm sorry to hear that. I hate that you're going through that. Um, be, when growth happens, I can't be there for you the way I used to be there for you. The way I used to be there for you, I had time on my hands. I wasn't doing too much. But now it's like when you step into your purpose, you realize that your purpose isn't just for you. It's for the people that come before
Just pure joy.
you.
I love seeing
It's
people
for
talk about
the
their
kids that I
passion
don't even
and what
have yet.
they
It's for
love
my
doing.
sisters
And
that's
there's
looking up to
never
me.
a doubt
It's for my
that this
parents. My
is
parents have to
your
look back and
heart,
say,
your
man, like,
body. Well, not
my
your body. We're
daughter
not going to
chose
give
to
it
do
all of
this
that.
with her
But
life.
it
So
is
when
your
they say, what
passion,
are you
and you are
going to
doing
do?
amazing
I want my parents to be
things.
able to have something
Now,
to say, instead of being able to say, oh,
yes,
oh,
it'd be
my
that
daughter
way.
just doing
Sometimes it is. We
whatever.
be putting in blood,
So,
sweat, and tears sometimes, and people
people,
don't see
they
those
try to
things
bring you back, but
often.
when you put those things into
Um,
perspective, it's like, man,
if
it's not worth it.
like
It's not
every
worth
time
it.
I
So,
talk about you or I, talk to you, I always thank you for your advice and motivation in my beginning stages. Now that you have changed the way you think of things. If someone were to come to you and ask you what they need to
yeah,
do to
mind,
start a
body, spirit, and
nonprofit or
soul.
how they should move, what would be your advice?
Yeah. Oh, so it's so funny because my response, I'm sure, is probably like the response that people drag through the mud on Facebook, but I give it. So, like, I had someone reach out to me recently with like, how, I want to start a nonprofit. How do I go about it? And I always have two answers I want to give. But it's my honest answer if I'm true to myself. Thankfully, I knew the person, and the person knew me, so she knew I was going to give it to her raw. But I told her, I said, well, if it's something you really want to do, you're going to get up and research. You're going to read, find out, like, and that's where I think with anything, like I said, I'm a part of a sorority, Delta Sigma Theta sorority. And before you join anything, I mean, that's one thing. I mean, even before Delta, I knew this, but Delta really put emphasis on it. Um, Anything you're passionate about or you truly want to be involved in, you're gonna take that initiative. You're going to take that initiative to read, research, gather information. Um, you're not going to be so quick to want to just seek somebody to ask. Now your question more so is going to
Hmm
be, okay, Raven, I Googled how to start a nonprofit. It says that you need to go to the Oklahoma Secretary of State. It says you need to do this. I'm doing this. But I just want to see, can you help me look over something? Those are the questions I like to answer. Like, I don't, I think that if you're truly passionate about something, you're going to do the work. And for me, I just always see things from a different perspective because when I started my nonprofit, I didn't go to nobody. I didn't, I asked if this, I knew this is something I want to do. If there's place for me here. When I had those conversations, it wasn't a place for it. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to start my own. I didn't ask anybody, hey, how did you start your nonprofit? I went to Barnes and Nobles and bought me some books. I watched YouTube videos. I downloaded the articles. And then when I got stuck, that's when I was like, all right, now I need to go ask somebody about this. And more times than likely, I just went up to the source, the Secretary of State. Hey, this is what I want to do. I have this paperwork. I've already printed it out. I've already filled it out. But that's why I would say, it's to answer your question, to anybody who wants to start a nonprofit, if you're not
Okay.
serious about it, it'll show. Your nonprofit will only last about up to 3 years, if that, if you're not serious about it.
Mhm.
Know what you want to do. Know what you want to go into. Don't start something that's already out there and think that, oh yeah, I'm going to start because it's different, because it's me. No, because then you're making it about you. You're saying, oh, I want to start the nonprofit, even though, let's say, for example, I start something like Poetry and Chill, Love Gregory, so I'll just use him as an example. And I say, oh, well, I want to start something called Paintings and Relax. Why are we doing that? Just go join in with what he's doing and see if there's a spot for the artistic side of it, or join Heart Studios. Maybe if you just want to do a painting in Relax, get with Erica with Heart Studio and see, hey, can I have an event, or can we have an initiative? Don't go out doing the same thing someone else is doing just because you think it's going to be different, just because it's you. Because all you're doing, in my opinion, is duplicating the work instead of collaborating and supporting what already exists. So that's one thing I would say. That was one thing I was very big on when I started Selfless Hands, is making sure what will set Selfless Hands apart from everything. Because at this point, there's nobody in Oklahoma City that I can't collaborate with. Because honestly, it's not a lot of people that I'm doing the exact same thing as. Um, what else would I say? Make sure it's something you're passionate about and not something you're just doing just to do, because then you can just do that at any moment. You can always host a canned food drive and a turkey drive. Like, just go volunteer one. Um, and there's nothing wrong with that, something you're passionate about. I just would not advise anybody to go down the whole rabbit hole of starting a nonprofit if it's not something that they're willing to commit to, because it's not just going and getting your nonprofit stuff. And some people think they got to go get a 501c3. Even that takes research. You're not just getting any type of 501c3s. What is your 501c3 for? Do you really need it? Because something that people don't realize is, you out here going to IRS, getting you an EIN number and a 501c3, and you done no research on how to maintain it. Now you're losing your stuff. Now you're playing around with IRS. Like, I always tell people, yeah, and it's unnecessary. It's just unnecessary stress behind something that you're not really serious about. So that would be, so if anybody came to me, that's the conversation that I have, especially now, because, and then now, I've had people say, oh, well, can you help me? I'm not going to be able to do that. To be honest, the only reason that I'm not able to do that is because I'm already trying to balance my own life. I can help God, but I don't have the time like I used to have, and that's also something that I think a lot of, entrepreneurs and business people aren't really as honest about, is saying that, I don't have the capacity, and honestly, I started this 5 years ago as a 19-year-old, like 19, 20-year-old, I was just going off impulse at that time, trying to, well, I wouldn't really say impulse, but the thrill. I was going off of adrenaline. So I had time to just look at that. But I also, one thing that I will say, I kind of made the mistake of, I only learned about the nonprofit to what was important for what I needed to know. but not for everybody. So, somebody come up to me and say, "Oh yeah, I want to start a football league." I can't tell you how to do that. Like, so that's why, and I always have to clarify that because I'll say I can't help you, but it's not that I can't help you. Like, I can help you with the basics, like go to the Secretary of State. That's the first step, But like, there are certain things that I'm realistic and I say like I just don't know. And by the time I figure it out, I'm gonna be researching it right beside you because I don't know. Like I don't know what you need. So that's why it all goes back to what I just said. Read, research, do all of that before you go to anybody. Because just like with Delta, anybody, I mean any sorority for example, if somebody say, "Can you write my letter of recommendation?" It's gonna be a thing, well, why do you want to join? Why do you want to step into your purpose? That question is always going to be why. And if the why seems very temporary, it's not even worth jumping off the diving board for. You're not going to commit to it. So that's what I would say. That is my advice. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. Yeah. I am too. Yeah. 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 That's true. I mean, I ain't getting up at no 4:30 for nobody. Yeah, I ain't getting up at 4:30. Mm-mm. Yeah, but that's an example of everybody's journey is different because it ain't nothing I need to do for self-defense at 4:30 in the morning. Girl, please, I don't get out the bed until after 6 for any, like, I don't, yeah, girl, please, yeah, no, 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 nah, I just no. I'm more of a late person, but I mean, don't get me wrong. Like my full time job, I know a lot of people on this, you know, entrepreneur solely. I don't plan on quitting my full time. I love what I do. I love my federal job. I love my nonprofit job. I mean, so it is different for me where I am able to get up. I don't mind working for the man, because I'm not working for the man. I'm working for me. Like my career is a one woman career. You go into it by yourself, you retire by yourself, and I think that's one thing that I do love about my journey is that, I do see a lot of people that have, quit their full time job to step out on their passion, whether it's entrepreneur and nonprofit or whatever. And I commend them for it. I don't knock them, but I also love the beauty of the fact that it's not just a one laner either. It is possible to run your nonprofit and run, do your full time job, tackle both goals, and still get your sleep. Because people say millionaires are what they say millionaires are up between 4 and not this one. Yeah, nah, this millionaire is gonna be up waking up at 7. Don't call me before 8. But I mean, just that's the beauty of life is that it's catered to whatever you want it to be, whatever you want it to look like. Mhm. Yeah. Mm-mm. But I mean, it wasn't always like that. It wasn't always like. I mean, well, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think. Was always well. It wasn't always like that in the sense of like there was some jobs that I mean it was just some coworkers I couldn't stand. But like I said, it just really just depends on who you are, like as a person, how you handle certain things, how your mindset. Because with me, I'm very much what I want, I will get, and what's for me is not gonna miss me. I get out the bed for the bread, so it's like if you're not cutting my paycheck, I don't care what you talking about. Um, and I think that just, it just really just depends. I mean, and I always tell people, I hate that there are people that's working jobs that they hate. And, they may not even know how to get out of it, and I'm blessed. I'm very blessed. Cause yeah. I don't know. I make my job work for me, if that makes sense. But yeah. I hope that all my future jobs will be like that because I know I'm going to move around and I won't always be in this same position. So all I can do is just pray that my next jobs are just as amazing as this one. And if it's not, I'm going to make it amazing um, by any means necessary because I refuse to be uncomfortable for anybody. So, yeah. Mm-mm. Mhm. Thank you. Mm. Yeah. I pray so. I appreciate it. Don't let age. I mean, age don't matter, man. Like to be honest, because it ain't never. Long as you breathing, long as y'all breathing, it don't matter if you start at 50. Because as long as you breathing, you still got another. I mean, shoot, some people live to be over 100, so you still got another 50 years to make something happen. So, you good. I appreciate it. Thank you. You too. Thank you.